We are joined by Sarah D. Duncan, Wellness Center Coordinator and Mental Health Grant Project Director of Eureka City Schools, who will present on their CWC work related to the scope of CWC services and supervision. And after Sarah D. presents, we will have some time for Q&A. So with that, I will pass the mic to Sarah D. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk to you about our wellness coach program. And here we go. Next slide, please. Giving you a little background about where we are. If you're not familiar with Humboldt County, we are very far northern California. We're a pretty large county in general. We are seated on the ancestral homelands of the Wiyot tribe, with the rest of our county, including 3 of California's largest tribes, the Yurok, Hoopa Valley, and Karuk tribes. Eureka is the biggest city in Humboldt County, approximately 25,000 people. And we're about 270 miles north of San Francisco, just to give you a little perspective of how far up there we are. We're actually closer to Oregon than to San Francisco. Our region is super isolated. We deal with all of the things that most rural communities are going to be dealing with. Access to services is a huge one for us up here. But additionally, we have intergenerational trauma, substance use and abuse, high rates of poverty, high rates of homelessness, and foster care. Next slide, please. A little breakdown of Eureka City Schools specifically. So we are the largest school district of 31 school districts. We have 9 schools and approximately 500 staff. Here's a little breakdown of our enrollment. Our current enrollment is 3,320 students. You can see the breakdown of there. Additionally, I put in, we have an extremely high, if you know anything about your McKinney-Vento rates, ours is 7%, which is I think almost 3 times the state average. Our chronic absenteeism rate is pretty high, as well as our special education rates. So that's just giving you an idea of kind of the dynamics that our school district is dealing with. We implemented a wellness center program. It's in its 5th year. And so this is a little structure breakdown of what we're doing up here. We have a hub and spoke model. So we have our main center at the Eureka High School, and then we call them wellies. So we have 8 satellite wellies at all the other sites. There's a different model for how to access and tiered systems of support for the elementaries versus the secondary. Some of our dedicated staff, we have all of our secondary sites have a dedicated school social worker or a mental health service provider, while the elementary schools have to share. Those are both funded through a Department of Education grant, a federal Department of Education grant that we received. That has since gotten taken away. So lots of staff are getting laid off. So we're in a transition phase. We also have 6 wellness coaches. We have 1 dedicated to each secondary site, 1 that serves McKinney-Vento students. So they travel around. So they're specifically targeting McKinney-Vento students who might need some extra help. And then our elementary school sites share as well. And those are funded through the HCI Employer Assistance Grant. And then we also have a partnership with Cal Poly Humboldt, who has a CWC course. And we have 5 interns, wellness coach interns right now serving in our schools. Next slide. Here I just wanted to share because we have an internal wellness program, we were able to kind of build this program the way we wanted it. We didn't really have to integrate it into other systems. It was a system that got to be created. And I just want to point that out because sometimes it can be hard if you're looking at integrating, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in some more slides. But I wanted to show you, this is for wellness and mental health services. These are our tiered services. So tier 1 is walk-in break space. So in high school, you can take your own break whenever you want. Crisis screening, intake assessment is in our tier 1. So we'll do a screening right out the gate. Classroom presentations and sources of strength. Tier 2 is our therapeutic groups and our empowerment groups, which for us is just a designation we make where a therapeutic group is going to be run by someone who has a license or is pre-licensed, usually follows a curriculum and is during class time. Whereas an empowerment group is going to be more like a club open, more social topics. They might have goals and things, but they're not getting pulled out of class. Student leadership, brief intervention. And then tier 3 is our ongoing therapy. So our treatment. So if the screening suggests that you might need like ongoing support, we are fortunate to have on-site service providers, referral for a community-based organization, or a formal crisis assessment. And the reason I wanted to put this up is that almost everything except for tier 3 and therapeutic groups are something that we are having our wellness coaches do. So we hired, and we can talk about that on the next slide too. We can go to it. We hired our wellness coaches with this in mind. So we got the employer assistance grant. I created a job description, and it was created in mind that their main job duties were going to be these billable services in alignment with our tiered systems. So they were hired specifically for that role. I wrote billing and case management, which I'm hoping will become a billable activity for wellness coaches. Talking about that family connection and stuff, that would be really valuable for schools to be reimbursed for like that engagement with family, which is a more case management role. And I started my wellness coaches off with the expectation of billing. We didn't do it for the first, I think they may be employed a whole year before we actually got billing, but that was the expectation. So we were growing towards that the whole time. So we were learning that, and they knew that once we were starting to bill, that their time needed to be spent on billing, or they needed to prioritize that. And so that was an expectation that was already kind of there. Right now we're working on, I put this in here about like transitioning roles to a wellness coach versus hiring. So we're doing both. And we've been slowly identifying staff who could be certified. So first, actually some of our interns were able to be certified, and they've been billing already. And then we have identified some community school liaisons that could be certified. So we're trying both ways, and there's trade-offs for both of those. And our lessons learned that I would share is like really making sure that billing is written into your job description, which we know takes a lot of time. If you're creating a job description, it's got to get approved. It's got to go through the union. It's got to do all those things. So I'm putting that out there to prepare you for, needing to include that. And then supervision and oversight, which I'm going to talk about more. And then the transitioning roles versus updating job descriptions. Or just hiring flat out for wellness coaches. In my opinion is that I would prefer to create a job class for wellness coaches and not transition people just because there seems to be more confusion with like, what is my job now? If I'm doing wellness coach stuff, who's my supervisor? My license, everyone's working on my license. And some of them I'm like, I've not met that person. I don't train them. So there's some things like that about transitioning that I think is okay. But it's a learning process, right? So we can go on to the next one. I'm sure you'll have questions, but we can come back. So for me, I set up a supervision structure where we do 90 minutes a week. So it's on a Tuesday afternoon after school's out. All the wellness coaches, the interns, like now I'm requiring anyone who has gotten certified has to come now too. So I get to know them and they're in the same cohort. It's a time when we do like updates. We do case consultation. We use that time. The reason I made it an hour and a half is so that we could do trainings. It's a time when if I have someone else come in and train, I will invite them to that time so that the staff already have that blocked in their schedule, that they are coming to that time already to get the training. We do billing updates and review. But the day-to-day supervision is by the site school social worker or mental health service provider on the day-to-day. And then I just put in there that it is a requirement by HCI that they be supervised by a licensed or someone with a PPSC. And then training. So most of our training does take place during the supervision time. I include this link and I have pictures in the next slide, but if you actually want to see the link, this is just a mental health training plan that I made that is for all of my staff. So when I have interns come on, new mental health service providers, new social workers, now all our wellness coaches, they follow the same training guide. And then I have a pacing guide that I go with it. So the next slide is sort of a picture of that. You can pull up the link, but you can see that it sort of starts off like get your email for the school. It's like school based and then goes into mental health based and then goes into billing. So we kind of are walking them through this, and then each person has their own that we check in on supervision, like where are you at? Where's the progress? What things do you need to get done? Again, you can see some of this is just for us. So like our MTSS and referral flow review is going to be, and our logging and documentation is internal. Our crisis protocol, because that's a requirement of my wellness coaches that they have to be able to do a Columbia screener, because we have to do them all the time, which is a crisis danger to self screening tool. Learning your mandated reporting. I require a group project, so we learn about how to run groups. Then I have them create a group, and then they have to run their group. So that's a good way to get them trained to do the groups. And then we go into billing. So you can see essentially this is just a training grid that I made that is from my historical knowledge and training, but also from the competencies put out by HCI for wellness coaches. Next slide. That also is a link that went up on the top for this billing cheat sheet that I've made for my wellness coaches. And it is based off of our EHR, so our electronic health record system, where we bill. So some of it might not make sense, but that's a good way to make a training grid off of your EHR system. I put up there the timing, the things I notice with people that are having the most hard time with billing is remembering how to bill for the time. And then also remembering, actually, it's kind of easier for wellness coaches. They can only pick two things. So that usually they're what do you call it? The service you're providing can be really confusing in some systems. Like there can be a list of, you're like, I call it an intake, and it's like not on the list of your EHR of what you're supposed to pick. So I highly recommend when you're moving that you spend the time. I did take a long time to make this. I did a lot of trial and error, because it is so helpful for a staff person to just be able to be like, we call it a brief intervention. I'm going to call it a face-to-face session. I'm going to bill 30 minutes, and here's what I'm going to write. Will save you so much time and trouble. And while I don't teach cookie cutter writing, I do say you can cut and paste these, but you need to put in personal information, or specific information on what your note looks like part. To go with that, then also I wrote this little part about the ORP, because I think that's another piece that is maybe hanging up districts, maybe a struggle. So the ORP has to be a licensed person. They have to be, registered with PAVE, which is why they have to be licensed, because you can only register in PAVE if you're licensed. I've heard that this is a barrier for many districts. I can understand why a lot of districts probably don't have funding or whatever to hire a licensed person. However, I just got an email the other day. There's people out there that this is a business. There's standing orders. You can hire an ORP. It costs money. So there, that's a cost that you have to maybe think about. And then the medical necessity piece, I also heard came up a lot, and I read through those manuals like back to back. And it specifically says on page 14, you do not have to provide documentation of medical necessity. There are ways that we're safeguarding around that, thinking about future audits with the CYBHI billing and what they might be auditing for. And so we're building those into how we're writing a note, so as to maybe address some of those things like medical necessity. But as of right now, it doesn't need to be documented. So they say in the manual at this time. So that is, I did it really fast. Lots of time for question and answers. there's my info if you're interested. And yeah, happy to answer any questions that come up, or if you want me to go back and talk more about anything that I went through on there, happy to do that as well.